Hello, welcome. Hello, this is Ronny Leber from the Ronny Leber Show. And get ready for an incredible, amazing show today. We have a great, fascinating guest, and he's joining us right now from Sydney, Australia. He has an engineering background. Who totally transformed his work and followed his passion to become a transformational coach. There, he has helped more than 10,000 people in over 7,000 hours of live seminars. So please give it up for Henrik Nordenstedt. Yeah,
Everyone,
let's imagine something like that. Yeah,
I'll take
incredible.
it.
Henrik, tell us a little bit about you and your background, and what is a transformational coach?
Well, without going into the full life story, I'm Swedish. So if there's a little bit of an accent there, then you know where I'm from. I was born in Sweden, Northern Europe, and I really grew up as studying to be an engineer. I really followed kind of like the normal path, the set path that you're supposed to take. And from a very, very early age, I kind of just wanted to fit in. So I was kind of like following along the career path. I got a good degree and all these sort of things. And for me, I had an interesting experience where I was doing all the right things. That is, I was well paid. I was in a career that was like esteemed, and there was some status to that. And I was doing well in my career, but I wasn't happy. I found myself coming home, and my life really was like the last 2 hours of the day when I was completely drained, giving my all to kind of like someone else. And it really confused me because I was doing all the right things, but I wasn't feeling happy. And the answer for me was to work harder. So like banging my head against the wall, and the answer was to bang harder, kind of thing. So I did that for a little while, but I very quickly noticed that I needed to change something, and that really launched me into a different world of personal development. I've always been very much into travel, so there was a point where I was working abroad as an engineer, and really connected with other things that were important to me, and really got
Before we get
curious
into the travel thing and so on, because you actually come from like being a safety engineer in a way, or fire safety, and I mean, talking about Swedish, what's up with Sweden and
world
safety?
politics.
Like, talk about Volvo.
Talk about Volvo. Well, so I'm a fire
Because
safety
Volvo is also a
engineer, so
Swedish
I've
car, and Volvo is like the car manufacturer that basically owns the value of safety.
well, kind of. I mean, there's three things that people are associated with Sweden a lot. It's Volvo, IKEA, and like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So those are
Really?
the top three. Yeah.
I thought music.
Well, I mean, if you're like a generation above me, you would have like ABBA and Roxette and stuff like that. Maybe for the younger crowd here, Spotify and Skype was like kind of big things. But
Skype is
yeah,
from Sweden?
yeah, Skype is originally from Sweden. I met one of the
Wow, I
owners.
didn't know that. And, I mean, come on. What do you mean, older generation? Rock said was my generation.
We're still young, Ronny. Like I misspoke.
Exactly. Yes, Spotify. Wow, we can also read it here from our viewers on Twitch. So that's awesome. Some comments. That's really cool. And you also, one of the things that I read when I was preparing for you for the interview today was that you said that you were not happy with the person that you were becoming. So what
Yeah.
person were you becoming, and why did you need to change?
So I find myself again like doing well, and from the outside world, like everything was great. Um, but I find myself becoming complacent. In Sweden, there's a corporate structure where you move along kind of like gradually, and I wanted to move faster than that. And I felt there was like a pushback from how things were done. So I very much felt like I became a little bit like complacent, and I was doing well, but kind of like being lazy about it because I wasn't rewarded for going like full steam. I felt myself being kind of like buying emotion, if that makes sense. Like I would use the money I earned from my career to go on expensive restaurants and basically like buy back some of the emotions and some of the freedoms that I felt I lost. And for me, in the beginning, it was just like fun and I'm doing it. And but I couldn't get some of the freedom and some of the good feelings that I used to have when, say, traveling and other ways. So I didn't feel fulfilled in it, and that made me feel like I was stuck in something that I didn't want to do. But I was doing everything right, and I shouldn't move. I shouldn't do anything else. So it was a little bit of a catch-22 for me. I didn't know where to go.
So when you actually said, okay, this has to change, or do you remember what was the moment where you said, that's it, I'm done with that? And then what were your greatest obstacles to change? Because I mean, I believe that there are many people out there who are exactly in that situation. They might be in a corporate job, or they might be in a job where they are not happy in, and at the same time they feel trapped because of course there's a regular income stream that comes in, and then there is maybe a passion aspect of something that they would love to do, but there is no income yet. So how was that for you? What was the moment that you said, that's it? And did you change immediately, or was it a transition time, or how did you do it?
Well, that's I'm trying to like compress this a little bit. The big moment that changed a lot was I went to a seminar, a Tony Robbins seminar on personal development, and I noticed there was a couple of changes that I did in a very, very short period of time, like hours, that changed how I felt, like that day and the next day and for all days to come. And for me, that was wild because I always spent a lot of time working on my career. It was gradual, and nothing that I did working harder felt like I got anywhere. But here I did this like little change, and it immediately felt better, and it was clearer, and like everything felt good. So I really got an idea that I was like playing the wrong game by working harder to feel better. And there was like different ways of doing it, and that made me really curious. Now, from that point, it took me 4 years. 4 years to actually kind of, get the courage, if you will, to exit, because I want to learn more about personal development and really like figure myself out, because I was a mess. But then when it finally came to it, at this point I was training and leading some of these events and helping people, and I felt so good about that. That was like my passion. I wanted to help people, and I helped someone like literally like save their life, or helped someone who was going to take their life to not do that. And it felt very important to me, and I was proud, and they were happy. And then 2 days later, I was back in my office, sending invoices just before Christmas, writing reports that nobody kind of was going to read. And the contrast of that made me really like, what am I doing? Like, what's going on? I could save lives, or I can type up reports that nobody's going to read. And for me, that was it. And that I ended up in my notice, and and I was gone. By the way, with no parachute.
Wow, I'm talking about an empowering meaning about that, and of course, and I mean, when you talk about with no parachute, it means there was no safety net, there was nothing. That was just like you and your dream. So how did you pull it off? I mean, what were the biggest obstacles when you just started out? Did you already have a client base, or did you just like, okay, I need to get clients because somewhere I need to get some income, or did you have something saved up, or how was that?
Well, so when I say no parachute, I did have a part-time business, and I was coaching people. Well, there was nowhere near any, meaningful money in terms of like replacing income or something like that. But I was coaching people. I was honing my skills, and I was helping real people in the real world. The biggest obstacles for me was, it shouldn't have been, but it was a little bit of a surprise. So I took the kind of mental, emotional psychology of like an engineer employee, and I went into business. Okay, so just to put a context for people, in engineering, you get very much rewarded for doing things right and knowing the answers, all that sort of stuff. Business, on the other hand, is doing things quickly, figuring things out along the way, and sort of like moving fast. That's what gets you rewarded in business. So for me, I had to do a lot of, here's the first thing that happened. As soon as because I was in the mindset of like, I have something valuable, so I'm just going to give that to people and they're going to pay me, knowing nothing about marketing, right? Nothing. So the first thing that really set in was fear, because what I was doing wasn't working. And in the beginning, it was...
So what were you doing that wasn't working?
Well, it was basically like, hey guys, I'm a coach. I can help you. Here's what I charge. And nobody listened. And I didn't have a track record yet, but I knew it was valuable, right? So I was basically like expecting that people would just like give me money, and there's so much more to it. And I very quickly noticed the huge gap of the person I was and the skills I didn't have and where I needed to be. And I would love to tell you something really aspirational here about like how quickly I overcame that. But the first thing that set in was fear and stress and kind of like distracting myself because it was really uncomfortable. And then it took me a little bit of time to sort of like, give me some solid kicks in the rear and get to it. But what I did love from moment one was that I felt I got my life back. And everything, small and big things that I did from that point, was relevant and meaningful to me and to my life and to my business and what I wanted to build. I think it's very much possible to have that and have a normal career, a conventional career. For me, I couldn't find that in the career I was in. But the feeling of reconnecting with something that I haven't felt for a couple of years, that was really important to me. I was spending time doing something that mattered to me while, working to build the income and revenue and all these sort of things. That feeling meant the world to me because all of a sudden I felt I was on the right track again.
So when you're saying that in the beginning you were distracting yourself, you were just like kind of, things were not working out the way that you wanted them to work out, and you were running away from that, but at the same time feeling relieved, not being in a meaningless corporate job anymore. Mm-hmm. What created the turnaround? Or how did you create the turnaround? Was it an insight? Was it something that you did differently? Was it like, how did you find the answers to the questions that you couldn't answer before?
Well, it's really simple. Like, I had some savings, I've saved up for years. So like I was solid for a good time, but I noticed like the savings kind of draining down while I wasn't doing it. And with an increased pressure of that, it very quickly made me like rush into action because I knew that if I didn't change this, like over the next couple of months or years, like I wouldn't eat. And that wasn't a good thing for me. That wasn't a good feeling. So there was an urgency there when I saw, the kind of like the savings draining down. So for me, it was kind of like pressure to do it. And then I just needed to go out and learn a bunch of the skills that eventually ended up working, and off I went.
So what kind of skills? Was it marketing or what, like, what's the secret? If somebody's listening right now and thinking, man, I want to do something inspirational. I want to do what I love. I want to build my own business. Mm-hmm. What is it? What's the secret?
Well, in very like now I could probably say it in simpler terms that I would back then. But find someone you want to help, like a person, like type of person, like someone you'd love to help. Find someone to help them with. Okay, that could be cooking courses or coaching, or you're an engineer consultant, whatever that is. But like, find something, a problem you can solve for them, and then give it to them. Like, you need some of the marketing skills, etc. But before you have that, what are you going to market to? Who are you going to market? What are you going to give them? Like, unless you have answers to these questions, it's really, really hard to figure that out. And once you have the answers, it becomes very much easier because you can talk directly to the person that you want to help. I believe it's possible to create $1 million or $1 billion business in whatever you want to do, right? Whether people have done it or not, I really truly believe that in the heart of hearts that you can do that. But people won't flood to you until you do the work, right? There was one of my favorite speakers says that, give me the weirdest thing you've ever heard of or can think of, and I'll show you a person who's made $1 million doing it. Like, you like socks or cable, like the things that you wouldn't believe. It's like small gadgety things, but they're crushing it if they know what they're doing. But there's a key to that. Mm-hmm.
I while you were saying that, I was just thinking, I don't know, do you ski?
I do.
And during the COVID times, we had in Austria the regulation that when you went up the mountain on a ski lift, that you needed to wear a mask. And of course, most people wear a helmet while skiing, and then it was quite of a hassle to actually put on the mask. And so there was somebody who invented 2 hooks to put on your skiing helmet, to put the mask just on the hooks.
Yeah,
simple plastic hooks. But I'm sure that guy became a millionaire by that. I mean, really, seriously.
And also, I think it's important. One thing that I've spent too much time in is that you being you and doing it your way is part of what makes your business unique, and like your services, if you do that, unique, and your products unique. You don't have to reinvent the wheel in terms of like, I need to come up with the next tech solution that will save the world. I mean, it's great if you can do it. Like, certainly for the younger generation that are like into social media and have the understanding of how everything's connected. Like, if you can find a home run there, like, sounds great. But it's also important, I think, that you don't have to like reinvent a lot of these things. And I think it's also important to go out and try stuff, like fail a lot and fail faster, and you will find kind of what works and what you like and what doesn't. And that's actually one of the quickest paths to finding the answer, is to get it wrong a couple of times. And trying to sit and write in your notebook is like really slow.
How did that work with your engineering background? Because you said engineering is all about getting things right. Now you're telling us, well, you need to get it wrong, at least a few times before you actually hit the home run. So how was that for you? Did you always have that mindset, or did you have to develop that mindset coming out of an engineering world where it's about not making mistakes, going into a world where it's all about uncertainty and making mistakes to grow?
Well, so first of all, the reason I was a great engineer is I was trained to be a great engineer with some of the skills, but also some of the qualities and emotional and the drive and all these sort of things that made me use those tools and use those skills and become effective in what I was doing. It was not who I am, like who I am in my DNA. It was something I was trained to do. What I noticed that I needed to train some other things if I was to be more effective in business. So that's the first point. The second point that came up for me when you said that, Ronny, was that there's a difference between being effective and efficient. And this is something that changed my life, by the way. So congrats to everyone who's hearing this for the first time. Effective is doing the right things. Effective is doing the right things. Efficient is doing things right. Now, I believe in your life, but certainly in the marketplace, doing the right things is so much more important than doing things right, because you'll be spending times and getting better at the right things, meaning the things that will move your business forward or make you happy or whatever that is. You can spend a lifetime doing the wrong things incredibly well, and that will neither make you happy or very successful. So of the two, you want to focus on doing the right things first. That is maybe spending time learning about marketing, even if you suck, right? And then becoming better at it, and then start focusing on like doing them right.
It's like the old saying that don't major in minor things, which who was it? Zig Ziglar or Jim Rohn or somebody?
Yeah, I think it's Zig Ziglar. Yeah.
Yeah, like don't major in minor things. Like really choose what you want to major in. And well, that's fascinating so far. One of the fascinating things that I read about you was I unintentionally smashed my life compass at age 25. What does that mean? And what even is a life compass?
Well, okay, let's see if we can make now we're getting into the weeds, right? I came from a time in my life at the time when I was 25, and it was really like one of the first times that I can remember that I finally got into my stride. It was a time in my life of incredible happiness, and it came after traveling and getting really clear on some things, and starting doing some of the work that we're talking about right here, which is kind of like emotional rewiring, and how is it possible to build the person that you need to be happy or to succeed or whatever. And the answer is yes. And I had this experience after being traveling in South America for 6 months. I came home super motivated to get this done. And for the next 6 months, I got really solid on a morning routine. I got really I really relate to it as building myself, because it started out with something really small, and then the momentum grew and grew and grew, and I was in this super flow state for 6 months or more. And I got my thesis in South Africa. That was not possible, but somehow I pulled it off fully funded, 7 scholarships, all these sort of things. I was flying and I loved it. And from those highs, I ran into, probably like to date, one of my absolute biggest walls. And it was a really poor decision that I made. Now, the story is longer than that, but basically the core that I felt, I was so clear on who I was and what I was standing, like what I was sort of passionate about and going for and the direction in my life. And then there was people that were close to me that noticed that I showed up very differently than I used to, family included. And they loved me, right? But they were like, Henrik, you're being more loud than usual. You're being like all over the place. There's so many things going on and we don't recognize who you are. We've known you for all of your life. And this sounds like you're doing something that is not, like the change was too rapid kind of thing. But I felt really good. And I ended up in this basically like argument with people I loved on who I was, like who I was. And they had an image of who I was, but I felt so clear. And here comes the little bit of a stupid decision. Then I can tell probably the story of or the effects of that probably more people can relate to, because I think it's more common than you think. So the little dilemma here was that the people that loved me had a very different image from how I was showing up. And they wanted me to change. And they said, like, Henrik, there's something you're not seeing here. Like you're gonna get hurt. If you're doing something like this, like you're gonna get hurt. And we need to let you know, and we want to keep you safe. And they were very beautiful about it. They were congruent, they were authentic, and they meant it. And I didn't feel it at all. But later on that night, I went back to my room and I was like, well, do they love me? I was like, 100%. Do they want the best for me? Yes. Are all of them saying kind of the same thing? Are they seeing the same things, like multiple points of data kind of thing? They're like, yeah, they are. And then I started being like, maybe they're right about me and who I am and what I should do and who And that sounds like a really small thought, but I kind of accepted that, if you will, and started falling, like spiraling. And what happened was that for the next 3 years, I didn't have, how you have like your gut feeling? Yeah, like a gut feeling for something. I didn't have that for 3 years. I didn't have
Because
that
you were
at
not
all.
following your path, you were following their path.
Not even that. The physical response I didn't feel. And let me ask you this, Ronny. How do you know if something is right or wrong?
Well, gut feeling for sure is going to tell you something.
Here's the general pattern. You'd be like, do I agree with this? And then there's a gut feeling or a response from your body saying like, yes, I do. And then you know that that's right for you, or something you agree with, something you believe in. Now, for me, that was the thing that was turned off. That was the thing that was telling me was right or wrong. So for the following 3 years, I was kind of like rebuilding my world from the ground up. There's a longer story to this, but let me tell you a couple of consequences that maybe people can relate to more.
So by the way, before you tell the consequences, Henrik, so that's the life compass that you crashed.
The life compass was my ability to determine right from wrong in my life, and whether I agreed with something or not, or where to go in my life. I could have all the thoughts and all the options, but I could no longer connect to that place that told me what was right or wrong for me. And the thing that was so strong that I built in the preceding times, that I felt so strong about, was like gone. And I felt like I literally broke something because I couldn't get it back. And 3 years later, I still didn't have it. I felt like I broke something, like I was broken.
So give us the consequences.
So some of the things that happened for that, because I didn't have my own kind of response, was I started overvaluing what other people thought a lot. So I could come up with what I thought was good or reasonable, or like I finished a deadline or something like that. And then I needed someone else to vet if this was actually good or not, because I didn't trust myself, if you will, to say that. I didn't trust my own opinion of that, so to speak. It was very, very, and if you think of living like that, it was very stressful, because I've always looked for kind of like the external to validate what was going on, not only inside of myself, but like in my life. So I felt incredibly uncertain in myself and unsettled. My energy was like super low because my mind was always looking for kind of answers and external, and how can I make sure that I get things right. And it was not one of my top times in my life for sure. But today, it's probably one of my biggest strengths in life, I would say. And that is this.
The real question is, how did you reassemble it?
Well, I can give you an example of the first point that maybe you get like one foot on the ground. And that was like, I was such a mess that I started calling around to people that I've had disagreements with, or like girls I used to date. And I used to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I was so self-centered and all these sort of things. And they were like all weirded out. They're like, this is weird. But then I ended up calling this girl, and she was incredible. And she was like, Henrik, are you okay? And I was like, well, yeah, but like, I did these things, and it didn't work out the way we both wanted to. And she was like, yeah, I know. And because I want to be with you because you're a great person. We had fun. And it was great. And like, it was passionate, all these sort of things. But Henrik, are you okay? And for me, that is the most beautiful thing anyone could have said to me at those times. I get emotional thinking about it. And the reason for that was that I remember those things too that she described. And all of a sudden, like, I wasn't all messed up. Like, some of the things kind of still made sense. So that was my first thing. It'd be like, okay, I didn't mess up everything. There's like some things. And I literally like put my foot down in the thing that I was sure of, or got validated, could kind of bridge my reality, if you will. And then I started like kind of like a person in a dark room, like feeling a wall and kind of like tracing the walls, and kind of like rebuilt my experience from that. And it was not pretty, but that was the first thing. And the turnaround, I mean, it was 3 years. I went to psychologists and people, that knew these things, and I couldn't get help. And that's one of the reasons I'm passionate for what I'm doing, because wherever I went, nobody was willing to face my reality, meaning that they listened to what I was saying, but they were going into their framework of how it's supposed to work. And from that framework, they couldn't help me because they were not helping me in my world, if you will. It kind of like set me up both in business and in life, and in my perspective of that. But the big thing that changed was kind of by accident and by chance. I felt I was broken because I couldn't feel my gut feel for years. And then someone asked a question about this good time that I had, and how I felt when I was so strong, like when I was so like kind of like built up inside, and so like felt so strong. And when I started telling the story and going through that, well, that was a great time. It's not anymore, but like, that was a great time. And here's what I did, and here's what I felt. And as I was telling the story, like, I started getting into state, right? I started like feeling it again. And for me, that was the first time, even just the memory of it was like this feeling, like it was like a ball of fire kind of here. There's like this drive, and this, like, I felt so freaking good. And as I felt that, like the memory of the gut feel, if you will, was kind of there, like it was included. It was just like plugged in. And I was like, wow, like that felt great. And then I was like, I wonder if, I like, where did I feel that? And sort of like tracing back the feelings of that, and started asking some of the questions to the same place, really like in my body. And all of a sudden, like the gut feel, like, here's the distinction that I made that time. It wasn't broken. I just turned the volume like way down, so I couldn't hear it, couldn't sense it, but it was still there. It was there all throughout. But if I'm going to psychologize it a little bit, it's kind of like, if I take something that I know to be true, and make that false, what would I have to do to live in that world is to mute the thing that says it's true. So that's kind of like the thing that happened. But basically, I wasn't trained in listening to that part. And then I got a clarity on how to access it again. And then when I came into these like situations where I used to look for external, I would manually kind of in the beginning go back to the gut feel and ask the questions there, and I would get my answers. And I would get super inspired again, and then off I went. Mostly
sounds a bit
relief, like because I wasn't broken, so happy.
Sounds a bit like the Gladiator story from the movie Gladiator. Like, first you were your own personality, and then suddenly you were a slave and then you had to fight your way to victory, to freedom again, to finally
Oh yeah.
reconquer and discover who you really are.
Well, I think that this is probably like one of my biggest lessons too. Like this story is obviously like very personal to me. I think there's more people than you know than walk around feeling this of like overvaluing what other people think. And maybe it's not muted their gut feeling, but certainly like there's a value of someone else needs to approve something. But one of the biggest things that came from this is kind of like this was my biggest obstacle in life at that time. But it's also like my biggest reward. It's the area that I'm strongest in today, in my identity. And that's something that I tell probably like most of my clients, because I feel very, if you can tell, I feel very strongly about this. And that is like who I am, like how I describe myself, who I am, is not a democracy. Like it's a beautiful dictatorship. Like I hold all of the votes, right, and all these sort of things. Doesn't mean I can't listen and take in other people's perspective, but when it comes to the vote, I have like 100%. And I think being able to go through difficult times and realizing that these difficult times will give me something that will give me value way in excess of the challenge right now is something that is very encouraging while you're going through tough times. Anticipation of that.
I can relate to something what you were saying, because you said basically that happened after you were gone for some time, for some months. You were not at home, you were not in your home environment, and then you went somewhere else and you explored yourself. You figured out who you really are. And when I was 16, I went to the high school for a year to the US. And I remember one of the things that for me was such a big learning was that I thought, this is a time for me. I can really discover who I am, because especially when we're growing up and you're not a set personality yet, you're even more shaped by your peers and by their expectations of who you are and who you should be in your life. And as a kid, you don't know anything else when you're growing up, because there are all those expectations from everybody around you, from your parents, from your grandparents, from your family, from your brothers, sisters, from school, and so on. And then I thought, I got 10 months. I'm just going to be who I want to be. And if they like it, great. If they don't like it, I'm gone in 10 months again. I don't care. So, and they really liked it. And I thought, I love this so much more, being that person than who I was before. And so I thought, I'm going to take this with me. And that's really cool thing. So wherever you are, and if you are in that phase, and if you're maybe also it doesn't matter what age you are, but if you have some time that you can actually spend somewhere else where you're just by yourself and you don't take anybody with you from your normal surroundings, you're going to grow like you've never grown before. And that's really an amazing journey. And talking about journey, because you were also already saying, you're from Sweden. You normally live in Sweden. Right now, you're in Sydney, Australia. And I read about you that you have been to more than 60 countries in the world. You told us about South America. Obviously, I know that you've been to the US, you've been to Fiji, you've been to all kinds of places. First of all, is that the normal lifestyle of a coach? And what makes it possible? And also, of course, what are the most favorite places in the world for you?
Oh, big questions. First of all, is this a lifestyle of a coach? It can be. I personally made, there was a time where my dream was to be, because I value travel so much, it's done so many great things for me. I love culture and people and growing and all these sort of things. So travel was amazing for me always. And there was a dream that I had of doing what is now referred to as like being a digital nomad. There was no term like that back then. But basically, if I can travel doing what I want, kind of like in the places I wanted to, and still have an income somehow, that was like a life goals. Like that was the most incredible thing.
Back then, there was just a nomad, right? There was no digital.
Yeah, there was just like wandering around people from tribe to tribe kind of thing, right? And the interesting thing was that I actually got that dream, in the sense I had the opportunity to do that, and I did that for a short time, and I found out that for me it wasn't it, and the difference was it was very fun, but for me it wasn't fulfilling, because it was always restarting. It was something that incredible experience, incredible meetings, but the sense of always starting over and being able to build relationships for like shorter times, if you will, not build a foundation that I keep building on, took me out of that life, if you will. I still value travel immensely, but not in that way.
How was that? How did you do it? Like, how long did you stay at one place when you did that?
Well, when I left my work, like my corporate career, which by the way, like I didn't leave a job, I left my career. Like I spent 10 years getting to that point, and then I kind of threw it away, which was difficult for me at the time, but felt right. Because I did all the right things, but didn't feel good. And then I did the wrong thing, meaning leaving a career, well-paid career that I worked a hard, a long time to get, but I felt incredibly good about that. So it was, I had both of those extremes. And I was in a relationship. So I started that out from I was living with my girlfriend at the time, etc. And so I started that from Sweden because I wanted to be with her, and now I had that freedom. But then later on, I started like doing seminars and traveling a lot for that. So I still had like my what do you call it? Like my sugar, my fix, right? But then finally, when I started traveling for a little bit longer, I was away for like, I did the digital nomad thing for like a 6 months or like 8 months or something like that. And some of these, I had fun always throughout that time. It's a great time. If you're young, you want to like, listen, there's a time and place to like travel and explore. And if you're a digital nomad and love it, like, please do it. Do you, don't do this guy or anyone else. Like, do you find what lights you up? But for me, I did that for about 6 months. I ended up in Colombia for a couple of months studying Spanish and doing salsa at night and working 8-hour days and doing everything a normal work day, and then learning and growing and experiencing, eating great foods. But then finally, I was like, I would stay in a place for 6 months or stay there for 2 years. And there would come a time where I had to leave. And knowing that this wasn't the place. And I think you don't need to know necessarily like where to live and all the right answers for your future. But for me, if I know that this is not long-term, I approach it differently. And for me, that's like lots of fun and lots of growth, etc. But for me, the fulfilling part comes from building upon something, and kind of something that lasts, like a family or building a business that keeps growing, or a passion that you're interested in, and whatever that is, like getting life better, if you will. And I felt that digital nomading for me was a constant state of fun, but it kind of wasn't taking me anywhere.
So if I understand you correctly, you were building a lot of breadth, like you were making things bigger, but you were not building a lot of depth. Like you were not going deep, like with the relationships that you developed with other people and so on, because everything was just on the surface. Is it correct?
Well, I like to describe myself as kind of like the deep person. Like I appreciate people, I want to hear about them, and like the deep stuff. I want to meet real people. But my challenge was that I developed deep relationships kind of quickly with people and friends and people I meet in general. And I would build relationships for 6 months and become really good friends, and then I would leave to another place and build deep relationships and then go. And nowhere would I have like relationships that kind of like stayed with me, like old friends, like the friends that just like they're there for you always. We become like Zoom friends or Skype friends or Facebook friends. And I didn't want more Facebook friends. I wanted more like real, like, geez, like the posse of, like your best friends, and go deep with a few people. That's what I wanted.
And once again, what were your most favorite places? Like, what did you enjoy the most, and what's still on your bucket list where you really want to go?
It's a big question. I was laughing about this yesterday. Someone asked me the same question. Because it depends. But what I will say, a couple of my favorite places, where I'm right now in Sydney, Australia, is so near and dear to me because it's where I did a lot of my journey. It's very much related to when you were 16, Ronny, and you had your journey of traveling for 10 months and all these sort of things. For me, I had that when I was 22, and it's Sydney, Australia, here in Manly Beach. And that changed everything for me because I was growing up in a place I was being a certain person in my friends and in school and all these in my family, right? And I went to a place where I could explore other options, and that, so I love Sydney. A couple of other favorite places, South Africa for similar reasons, because I did my thesis there. I got really deep with the people. I was out in ghettos and townships and talking with very real people. And one of the things I learned there was like, depression is kind of like a first world problem, because if you're really poor, you don't have the luxury of sitting around and doing nothing. That is something that when the government takes care of you, you have enough savings. Like when you have no savings, guess who's not depressed? Like it's you, right? So that was an eye opener for me for sure. And then Fiji, you mentioned me being to Fiji recently. The people in Fiji, I mean, it's a beautiful country, so many beautiful things and things to do and explore, culture, etc. The people of Fiji are some of the most beautiful people that I've met, for sure. Their outlook on life and their sense of community is far and beyond anything I've seen in a group of people.
Wow. Very beautiful, very beautiful. And what's still on your bucket list? Where do you want to go? And why?
And why? I want to go to Japan. I've never been to Japan. I've been to a lot of kind of like the main places, if you will. But Japan I've never been to. And I would love to go to Japan because I feel the culture is very different. That people relate to each other. Like I just feel it's a different world, if you will, with different values, etc. And also there's a lot of, and other places like South Korea. And I know there's something called K-pop, which is just like really weird. It's Korean pop, but it's a whole like lifestyle thing. And while I can probably get lost in some K-pop, what I love is that it's like a different world and experiences. And I'm always curious about culture and people. So Japan and South Korea would be two of them.
Like Gangnam Style in Korea.
Like Gangnam Style. Well, the following behind Gangnam Style for me is wild. It's weird. I love it.
So tell us, Henrik. I mean, you already shared a lot about, but what were some learnings that you actually took with you from your journeys that you, and some advice also to somebody who would love to do that, who would love to go on a journey like that?
Yeah. One insight is kind of simple. It's related to a word that I used to poo-poo a lot, and that is the word meaningful. I believe to live a meaningful life. Like if all you did is you spent your life doing things that matter to you, at the end you might be rich or poor, but you will have lived a very full life because you did things that mattered to you. And I think that is very important. I think a lot of young people today get lost because they look at what everyone else is doing. And the big is very spiritual questions like, what do you want? Like, what do you really want? And then do that. And I think that if you get clear on what you want, it's very easy to create a plan to get what you want as well. But that is something that I would say for sure to like dive in and get scared in exploring who you are and what you want, because there is nothing quite like it. That's one thing I would, and that's why I'm passionate about what I'm doing and how I'm helping people too. That's what I want for people, to live meaningful lives, have successful businesses in the way, but really like bring their gifts to the world kind of thing and feeling good doing it.
Who is somebody that you admire and why?
Oh, a lot of people. I mean, like Tony Robbins changed my life. Very much admire him. I'll tell you a story about it. Well, short, there's a girl I met, and she was 13, and this was like at a youth camp, right? So they did personal development things for a couple of days. And there was a 13-year-old girl who was scared of speaking in front of people. And at the end of a couple of days, she stood up in a room of hundreds of people and told everyone like how she's going to change the world. And stuff like that, not the words, but when you believe her, right? When you just, there's this certainty in it. People like that inspire me, especially when they're young. Like they don't have the know-how yet, but they go out and do it. And the passion behind that, love that. Anyone who can relate to anything like that or having felt like that, you're the inspiration for me, 100%. Because of the kind of the purity of human nature, wanting to help and do good, and the congruence behind that she felt. That amazing. Other people, I mean, people that use their skills and their resources to make their own and other people's lives better. better place. I believe entrepreneurship will kind of like save the world in some sense, because it is based off of delivering something that is valuable to other people. That's why I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I believe in that. And you know, I really love people like Peter Diamandis and Elon Musk that keeps pushing the boundaries of what other people think are possible. I think that is inspirational beyond compare. I love it.
And also pushing the boundaries of humanity with that.
Yeah.
What is a book that changed your life, or a book that is a must read where you say, hey, you got to read this? Like, if forever who's listening to us or watching us right now, what's a book they have to read?
Right. So I have a favorite that's actually not that mainstream. So if you're ever going to read one book, this is a book I read here in Sydney, Australia when I was 22. Changed my life. It's a short read. It's amazing. It's called Huna Mastering Your Hidden Self.
What is it again?
It's called Huna, H-U-N-A, Huna. It's a Hawaiian tradition. It's called Mastering Your Hidden Self. It's by Serge King, S-E-R-G-E King. One of the first tenets of that book is an old Polynesian tradition, Huna. And the first tenet, if you will, which is like convenient beliefs, is like the world is whatever you think it is, right? So if you think the world is a cruel place, then it's cruel for you. But if you think the world is a great and loving place, etc., then you're going to walk around and you're going to see a lot of like love and beautiful things. And I learned so many things from that book that shaped who I am today. And it was such an unconventional kind of find. So that's a book that I would recommend anyone to read, 100%. And tell me about it. Please tell me about it. I love it.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard of it, and I will check it out. Huna.
Please
it reminds me of Hakuna Matata, but it's not the same.
Yeah. So Huna is the kind of like the tradition, if you will. So the book is Huna, Mastering Your Hidden Self.
Wow. Beautiful. Henrik, we are almost at the end here for today. Where can people find out more about you, to see more about you, and maybe to get in touch with you if they say, wow, I want to know who that inspiring guy is? Tell us, Henrik.
Sure. Well, you can obviously find me on the social medias, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and the LinkedIns. Otherwise, you can go to my website, henriknordenstedt.com, and join one of my trainings. I help entrepreneurs and business owners kind of crush it by figuring out the emotions and the decision making and all these sort of things, so they can keep like updating their inner game as they grow in business. So they'll get more success and can help more people. That's what I do.
That's awesome. Any last rapid fire 45 seconds final thoughts that you want to give us?
I mean, if you're listening to this, you're into growth. If everything that I say like connected with you, just like take action on that, and know that you got it. Know that there's more answers and more available now than any time before. The one challenge I have for everyone is like lean in and lean into your own growth, because that will serve you and it will serve the world and your families. So and smile a lot. Help other people smile. It'll be a good world.
That's beautiful. And I actually want to add something to that. Don't wait until somebody gives you permission. Give yourself permission first to do it. You can do it. You have the right to choose. Like you said before, Henrik, that it's a bit of a dictatorship. You are your own dictator, so to speak. I don't know.
Who you are is not democracy. Yeah.
a different book title or something. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Henrik, for being with us today. Thank you, everybody who joined us today on this journey, and we hope you enjoyed it. See you next week.